came home for my son Leo's birthday with a small cake, a pack of candles, and a silly paper crown. I expected noise, warm lights, and someone calling my name from the kitchen. Instead, the house felt like a locked fridge. The air bit my face, and even the floorboards seemed cold. I stepped inside and shut the door, listening, but the silence was so deep it made my ears ring. In the kitchen, a single note waited on the counter, placed neatly like a bill. I opened it with stiff fingers and read, "We went on a cruise. You handle Victor." No goodbye, no explanation, no mention of Leo. My stomach turned. Victor was my stepmother Mara's husband, a man who smiled like a friend but acted like a judge. I called out for them, but nobody answered. I searched room by room, my breath fogging in front of me. Leo's bed was made, his favorite toy gone. Then I heard a faint sound from the back room we never used. I pushed the door open and felt my heart drop. In the dark, Mara lay on the floor, shivering under a thin blanket, barely able to speak. The ambulance lights painted the walls in moving red and white, and for a moment my freezing house looked like a strange theater. I stood on the front step with my arms wrapped around myself, watching the paramedics guide Mara out on a stretcher. Her eyes were half open, but she squeezed my hand once as they passed, like she was making a promise she couldn't speak yet. I climbed into my car and followed the ambulance through the quiet streets, trying to breathe like a normal person, trying to keep my thoughts from snapping in two. At the hospital, everything smelled clean and sharp. A nurse wrapped a warm blanket around Mara's shoulders, and a doctor told me she had been close to hypothermia. "If you had come later," he said carefully, "it could have ended differently." I nodded, but I couldn't speak, because all I could think was that someone had planned that ending. Someone had decided Mara's last moments would be cold and silent, as if she were nothing. I sat in the waiting area with my hands clasped, staring at my phone like it might suddenly explain what kind of family I had. Messages began to appear from Elise, my sister. The screen lit up again and again, each message more casual than the last, like she was texting about groceries instead of a living person. "Hey," she wrote, "we're busy. Don't worry about Mara, she's fine." Then, "Victor says you always overreact." And finally, "Also, don't go through the house. Just handle things like we said." I read those lines until they felt burned into my eyes. The worst part was how sure she sounded. Not worried. Not guilty. Just certain that I would do what they wanted. When Mara finally woke up, her face looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were wide and bright with anger. She asked for water, then pulled me close as if she feared the air around us might steal her words. "Not here," she whispered when I asked what she meant earlier. "At the house. He'll have people watching. He'll have ears." I wanted to argue, because the hospital felt safe, but the fear in her voice made me believe her. She looked straight at me and said, "Victor thinks I'm weak. That's why he made a mistake. He left clues behind." The next morning, I made choices I didn't want to make. I called my neighbor Claire, the one who always waved when she watered her plants, and I asked her to keep Leo with her for a little while. I didn't give details, because my mouth wouldn't form them, but she heard the strain in my voice and didn't push. She only said, "Bring him over. He'll be safe here." I drove to Claire's house, picked Leo up from the quiet room where he'd been playing, and hugged him so hard he squeaked. He laughed, not understanding, and that laugh almost broke me. I kissed his forehead and told him his birthday was not forgotten, just delayed. Then I left him with Claire and went back for Mara. I took Mara home carefully, like she was made of thin glass. On the way, I stopped at a hardware store and bought 2 space heaters, spending $180 I hadn't planned to spend. I bought extra extension cords, thick blankets, and a small flashlight, because I couldn't stop thinking about her lying in darkness. When we reached my house, it looked the same as it always did from the outside. Quiet, ordinary, with a neat yard. But the moment I opened the door, the cold reached for us again like a hand. I turned the heaters on and listened to them hum, a soft sound that felt like courage. Mara didn't go upstairs. She walked straight into the living room, slow but steady, and pointed toward the fireplace. "Move the rug," she said. I blinked at her. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. She just watched me, her jaw set, her eyes hard. So I did it. I pulled the rug back, and for the first time I noticed the floorboard in the corner, slightly uneven, like it never sat right. I had lived in this house for years and somehow my eyes had learned to ignore it. Mara reached into her coat pocket and took out a small key on a thin chain. "He never checked my jewelry box," she said. "He never thought he had to." Her hand shook as she passed me the key, but her voice stayed firm. "Victor hides things. Not because he needs them, but because he likes having secrets. Secrets make him feel taller." She nodded at the loose floorboard. "He thinks he owns this house. He thinks he owns me. But he doesn't." I found a flat tool in the kitchen drawer and worked the edge of the board. The wood creaked, and for a second I worried it would snap and leave us with nothing but splinters. Then it lifted. Under it was a metal case, dusty, heavy, sealed tight like it had been buried. My heart hammered. I looked at Mara, and she looked back with the face of someone who had waited a long time for this moment. I set the case on the floor and used the key. The lock clicked. The lid opened. Inside were papers stacked in neat piles, a small flash drive in a plastic sleeve, and a thick envelope that made my stomach tense before I even touched it. I opened the envelope and froze. Cash, bundled tight. I counted once, then twice, because my mind refused to accept it. It was $47,000. My hands went cold, but this time it was not from the house. It was from the truth sitting in my lap like a live wire. Mara watched my face change. "There's more," she said. "Look at the papers." I spread them out on the rug, and the room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were leaning in. I saw bank transfers, receipts, and printed emails with names I didn't recognize. There were addresses marked in America and in Europe, written in a neat, careful hand. There were numbers that didn't belong in normal family life. $9,000, $12,500, £18,000. There were dates that matched times Victor had been away for work. There were notes in the margins like someone had been tracking a secret path. I turned one page and felt my breath stop. My son's name was on it. Leo. At first I thought it was a mistake, like someone else shared his name, but the document had our address and his birthday. My vision blurred, and the paper trembled in my hands. "Why is Leo on this?" I asked, my voice thin. "Why would Victor put my child's name on anything?" Mara's face tightened with pain. "Because Victor uses people," she said. "Even children. He planned to attach Leo's name to a claim, to move money through something that looked innocent." Elise agreed. "She said you'd be too distracted to notice." I sat back on my heels, dizzy with rage. Elise. My own sister. The same person who used to braid my hair when we were kids. The same person who held my hand at our father's funeral. I wanted to believe Mara was wrong, that she was confused from the cold, but Elise's messages flashed in my mind again. "Don't go through the house. Handle Victor." Those weren't the words of someone who cared. Those were the words of someone managing a problem. Mara touched my arm gently. "They don't know what I kept," she said. "They don't know I made copies. They don't know I listened at doors and wrote things down." He started leaving me out of meetings, locking drawers, changing codes. He thought it would make me powerless. It made me careful. She pointed at the flash drive. "That's proof. And proof is heavier than cash." I picked up the drive and held it between my fingers. Small enough to lose, strong enough to ruin lives. The room was quiet except for the heaters humming and the faint tick of the kitchen clock. I thought of Leo at Claire's house, safe for now, laughing without knowing why his birthday had turned into a nightmare. I thought of Mara on the floor in the dark, left like discarded furniture. And I thought of Victor walking somewhere under a bright sky, acting like he had done nothing wrong. "What do we do?" I asked. Mara's eyes met mine, and the anger in them steadied me more than any blanket. "We don't panic," she said. "We don't warn him. We don't give him time to erase his tracks. We prepare." She paused, then added in a voice that sounded like iron under cloth, "And we make sure he understands something he has never understood in his life." "What's that?" I whispered. "That this house," she said, is not where people come to disappear. That night, I didn't sleep. I tried. I lay in bed with my eyes closed, but my mind kept replaying the same things. The note on the counter, the cold in the back room, Mara's shaking hands, Leo's name printed like a target on a page. Every time I started to drift, my heart would jump awake again, as if it remembered danger before I did. At 2 in the morning, I gave up and went downstairs. The heaters were still humming. The house felt less like a freezer now, but it still didn't feel like home. Mara sat at the kitchen table when I walked in, wrapped in a thick blanket, a mug of tea held close to her chest. She looked tired, but not weak. Her eyes were sharp, tracking me the way a person tracks a door they don't trust. Without speaking, she pushed the papers toward the center of the table. I sat across from her, and for a long moment we just looked at what Victor had hidden under our feet, like the evidence was a third person sitting with us. I turned on the flashlight and we started sorting. Bank transfers in one pile. Emails in another. Receipts, travel notes, and handwritten lists in a third. I wrote dates on sticky notes and lined them up in order, like I was building a map out of time. The numbers made my stomach twist. $9,000 wired to an account with a name I didn't know, then $12,500 moved again 2 days later. A payment of £18,000 listed under consulting, even though the company name sounded fake and the address was only a mailbox. I kept waiting for some normal explanation to appear, something boring like taxes or inheritance, but the more we read, the more it became clear this wasn't about normal life. It was about moving money quietly and using people as cover. Victor likes clean stories, Mara said softly, watching my face. He likes to look simple on the outside. Husband, businessman, family man. But inside he is always calculating. She tapped a page with a thin finger. This is not the first time. Just the first time he thought he could use your son. Hearing that made my chest tighten. He won't, I said, more like a vow than a sentence. He won't touch Leo. I pictured my boy's round cheeks, the way he still asked me to read the same bedtime book twice, the way he believed adults were supposed to protect him. My hands curled into fists under the table. If Elise helped him put Leo's name on this. I don't know who she is anymore. Mara didn't look surprised. I saw her change, she said. Not overnight. Slowly. She started visiting when Victor had money to show. When he bought the new watch, when he talked about trips. She stopped asking how I was. She only asked what he was planning. And when I got sick last month, she acted like my illness was an inconvenience, not a warning. Mara's voice shook for a second, then steadied again. They treated me like a problem to remove. I leaned forward and lowered my voice, even though the house was empty. So what's on the flash drive? We haven't looked yet. Mara's eyes flicked toward it like it was a loaded weapon. We looked together, she said. Not because I'm afraid of what we'll find. Because if something happens, you need to know everything. You can't fight a man like Victor with half the truth. We carried my laptop to the kitchen table. Mara's hands trembled as I plugged in the drive. My finger hovered over the folder, and for a second I hesitated, not because I didn't want to know, but because I knew knowing would change me. Then I clicked. The files opened like a door swinging wide. Photos of documents, scanned letters, screenshots of messages. A list of names with notes beside them. Some names had paid written next to them. Some had useful. Some had risk. My skin crawled when I saw the word risk beside Elise's name. Like Victor even measured her loyalty by cost. There were voice recordings too, short clips, some only seconds long. Mara explained she had left her phone recording in her pocket during arguments. During meetings she wasn't supposed to hear. It wasn't brave, she said. It was survival. I clicked one recording and held my breath. Victor's voice filled the room, calm and cold. He was speaking to someone I didn't recognize, discussing moving it through America, then washing it through Europe. He said amounts like they were nothing, another $20,000 here, keep £10,000 aside. Then I heard Elise's voice, softer, almost eager, asking, "What about the boy's name?" Victor replied, "It makes it look harmless. People trust family stories. People trust birthdays. My stomach turned so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. Mara closed her eyes, pain flashing across her face, but she didn't flinch. I stopped the recording and sat back, breathing through my nose like I was trying not to vomit. "That's enough," I said, my voice shaking. "That's enough to bury him." "Yes," Mara replied, "but only if we use it right." She reached for the papers and pulled out a page with a plan written in her neat handwriting. It listed names, dates, and steps. Victor is careful, but he is also proud. He believes he can talk his way out of anything. He believes fear makes people obedient. So we will not give him a clean exit. We will not warn him. We will let him return to this house and think he still controls the story. My mind raced. You want him to come back here? After what he did to you? The idea made my skin tighten with dread. Mara's eyes lifted to mine. "I want him to walk into the place where he thought he could kill me," she said. "And I want him to see me standing. That will hurt him more than anything." Her voice softened slightly. "But we don't do it alone. We don't do it recklessly. We do it with help, and we do it with proof." So we made a list of what we needed. We needed Leo safe. We needed the cash and papers out of the house in case Victor searched. We needed a way to record him clearly, without him noticing. We needed a reason to keep him talking. And most of all, we needed witnesses. People Victor couldn't intimidate easily, people who would stand in a doorway and make him pause. Claire became our first ally without even knowing the full story. I called her and said, "Can Leo stay one more night? I need time." She didn't hesitate. She just said, "Of course. I'll make him pancakes in the morning." Hearing that simple kindness made my throat tighten. I wanted to tell her everything right then, but Mara advised caution. "Tell only what you must," she said. "Until Victor is contained, trust is a locked door." We moved the metal case that same night. I carried it across the street in a plain tote bag, my heart pounding like someone could see the weight of it. Claire met me at her door, raising an eyebrow, but she didn't ask questions. She led me to a cabinet in her study with a heavy lock and said, "Put it here." I did, and when the lock clicked shut, I felt a small piece of control return to my hands. Back in my house, Mara and I reset everything like we were cleaning a crime scene without leaving a trace. We put the rug back. We smoothed the floorboard into place. We returned the living room to its normal look. The heaters stayed on, the lights worked, the kitchen smelled faintly of tea. We left no obvious sign that anything had changed. If Victor was watching from far away, he would see a calm house, not a trap. Then we prepared the hook. Mara said Victor wouldn't come back for warmth or guilt. He would come back for certainty. He would come back to check if I had obeyed. So we would give him what he expected to see, me acting tired, confused, and afraid to push. I texted Elise with the same careful tone she had used on me. "Mara is resting," I wrote. "The house is fine. I handled it." My fingers wanted to type more, anger, betrayal, every truth I had swallowed, but I kept it short. Her reply arrived almost immediately. "Good," she wrote. "Don't cause drama. Victor hates drama." I stared at the message and felt something inside me harden. Victor hated drama because drama meant attention, and attention meant light. He had lived in shadow so long that even a small lamp could burn him. Mara folded her blanket tighter around her shoulders and said, "He will return soon. And when he does, he will try to act like he never did anything wrong. He will smile. He will talk down to you. He will make you doubt yourself." I nodded slowly. "I won't," I said. "Not this time." Mara reached across the table and touched my wrist. "Remember," she said quietly, "revenge doesn't have to be loud. It has to be certain." I looked toward the window, toward Claire's house across the street where my son was safe, and I felt the fear shift into something sharper. Not panic. Not confusion. A steady, focused anger. "Let him come," I whispered. Because by the time Victor returned, the house would no longer be a place where he hid secrets. It would be the place where secrets ended. Victor returned on a grey afternoon, the kind of day that made the street look washed out and quiet. I saw his car before I heard it, turning the corner too fast, then slowing like he remembered he was supposed to seem calm. Elise was with him. I watched them through the living room window, my heart beating hard but steady, like it had already decided it would not run away. Mara sat upstairs where he couldn't see her yet, and Leo was safe across the street with Claire, laughing at something on the porch. That sound, my son's laugh, was the only warm thing that truly mattered. Victor didn't knock. He used his key, as if the door belonged to him and not to the people inside. The lock clicked, and then the door swung open. He stepped into the hallway wearing a bright shirt and clean shoes, carrying the smell of expensive soap. Elise followed, clutching a shopping bag like she was trying to look normal. Victor's eyes moved through the room, quick and sharp, checking corners without turning his head too much. He smiled when he saw me sitting calmly with a mug of tea. It was the kind of smile that tried to make you feel small. "Well," he said, drawing the word out, "look who's playing hero." I didn't stand. I didn't greet him like family. I just looked at him as if he were a stranger who had wandered into the wrong house. "Welcome home," I said evenly. Elise cleared her throat, but her voice stayed stuck. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Victor walked farther into the living room and stopped near the fireplace, close enough that I could see the faint sunburn on his nose. He glanced around like he expected chaos. When he didn't find it, he looked annoyed, as if my calm was a kind of disrespect. "You handled things," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a demand, dressed up as a sentence. "Yes," I replied, taking a slow sip. "I handled things." Victor leaned forward slightly, his hands loose at his sides, like he was relaxed. "Good," he said. "Because you have a habit of making problems where there aren't any." His eyes flicked to the stairs. "Where is Mara?" "Resting," I said. Elise's fingers tightened around the shopping bag. The plastic crinkled softly. Victor didn't notice, or he didn't care. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Let's be clear," he said, "the way a man speaks when he thinks he owns the air. You don't go digging into my business. You don't ask questions. You don't bring outsiders into family matters. You just do what you're told." I set my mug down carefully, making sure my hands didn't shake. "Why did you leave her in the dark?" I asked. Victor's smile stayed on his mouth, but his eyes changed. The warmth vanished from them, revealing something flat and cold. "Because she was in the way," he answered, as if he were explaining a simple choice. "She became difficult. She wanted to talk about conscience, about right and wrong." He gave a short laugh. "Those words are for people who can afford them." Elise made a tiny sound, almost like a sob. Victor ignored her. He looked at me as if he were measuring how much I knew. "You're useful," he said. "But only if you stay quiet. If you start barking, I'll put you outside too." The anger in my chest rose, but I kept it behind my teeth. "Victor," I said softly, "do you know what the funniest part is?" His eyebrows lifted. "What?" "You thought you were the only one who could hide things in this house." For the first time, his face twitched. Elise's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide, like she didn't understand why I was poking the bear. Victor stepped toward the fireplace. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, the calm beginning to crack. I stood up slowly and walked over to the corner of the rug. Elise took a step back without meaning to. Victor's eyes locked on my hands. I pulled the rug aside with no hurry at all, like I was showing him a party trick. Then I placed my fingers at the edge of the loose floorboard. Victor's breathing changed. Just slightly. But I heard it. "Don't," he said, voice sharp. I lifted the board. The space beneath was empty. No metal case. No envelope of cash. Nothing. But the empty space spoke louder than any words. Victor stared into it as if it were a mouth that had just swallowed his life. His eyes snapped to Elise. "You told him," he hissed. Elise shook her head fast. "No, I swear, Victor, I didn't." Victor grabbed her wrist so hard she gasped. "Then how does he know?" he spat. "Let her go," I said, my voice flat. Victor released Elise with a shove. She stumbled backward and caught herself against the wall, breathing fast. I didn't move toward her, because the moment wasn't about comfort. It was about holding the line. Victor turned back to me, his face red now, his smile gone. "Where is it?" he asked. I tilted my head. "Where is what?" He stepped closer. "Don't play games." I took one step back, just enough to keep distance, just enough to make him chase control. "You don't like games?" I asked. "That's strange. You've been playing one for a long time." The floor creaked above us. Victor's gaze shot to the stairs. And then Mara appeared. She came down slowly, one step at a time, wearing a warm coat and holding a folder in her hands. Her hair was brushed, her face still pale but steady, and her eyes were clear. When she reached the bottom step, she stopped and looked at Victor like he was something she had studied and finally understood. "Hello, Victor," she said. Victor's mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. His brain seemed to scramble for the story he had planned. "You're supposed to be," he began. "Dead." Mara finished for him, her voice calm. "Cold. Conveniently gone." She lifted her chin. "I survived the dark you left me in." Elise started crying quietly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat like a child. Victor looked at her with disgust, then back at Mara with fury. "You should have stayed quiet," he snapped. "You should have been grateful." Mara's laugh was small and sharp. "Grateful," she repeated. "For being locked away like a broken object." Victor took a step toward her, but I moved sideways, putting myself between them. "Touch her," I warned, "and you'll regret it." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You think you're brave," he said. "You think you can stop me." Mara lifted the folder. "We don't need to stop you," she said. "We only need you to talk." Victor's attention flicked to the folder. "What is that?" Mara opened it and pulled out papers, holding them up so he could see the top lines. "Transfers," she said. "Receipts. Names. Addresses. America. Europe." She paused, then added the part that made Victor's face stiffen. "And the file where you tried to use Leo's name." Something in Victor's posture changed then. Not just anger, calculation. He looked around the room, quick, like he was searching for exits, for phones, for witnesses. His eyes landed on my mug, on the table, on the hallway. He swallowed once, too fast. "You don't understand what you're holding," he said, forcing his voice to soften. "Mara, listen to me. We can fix this. We can talk." Mara's eyes didn't blink. "We are talking," she said. I reached into my pocket and raised my phone, letting him see the screen. The recording icon was bright. "And so is this," I said. Victor's face twisted. "Turn that off," he growled. "No," I replied. That was when the front door opened. Claire stepped inside, calm as morning, with two men behind her, Daniel and Owen, neighbors who looked ordinary until you needed them, and then you realized ordinary can be strong. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They just stood in the doorway and made it clear Victor wasn't alone with his victims anymore. Victor froze. Claire's eyes met mine. "Leo is fine," she said, steady and simple, as if she knew those were the words that would keep me standing. Then she looked at Victor. "And you," she added, "need to leave your hands where we can see them." Victor's throat bobbed as he swallowed. He tried to laugh, but the sound came out wrong. "This is a family matter," he said. "It stopped being a family matter when you tried to kill someone," Mara answered. Victor's gaze darted between us. His mind was running fast now. I could see it in the way his fingers flexed, in the way he kept shifting his weight. He wanted control, and he could feel it slipping through his hands like water. Elise sank to the floor, crying into her hands. "I didn't think," she whispered. "I didn't think he would." Mara didn't soften. "You didn't think because you didn't want to," she said. "You wanted the money. You wanted the trip. You wanted to believe his lies because they sounded like freedom." Victor snapped, "Enough." His voice echoed off the walls. He pointed at Mara. "You think this will end well for you? You think anyone will believe you? I can ruin you." I stepped forward, holding my phone steady. "You already tried," I said. "And you failed." Victor's eyes burned into mine. For a second, I thought he might rush me, grab my phone, smash it. But Daniel and Owen shifted slightly, not dramatic, just enough to show they were ready. Victor noticed. His shoulders tightened. Mara's voice dropped low, almost gentle. You wanted to disappear me, she said. But now you will disappear from this house. Victor's jaw clenched. He looked toward the window again, toward the street, toward the idea of escape. The old Victor, the confident one, was gone. What stood in front of us now was a man cornered by the truth. He took one step backward. Then another. He backed toward the door, trying to keep his pride intact, but pride is hard to carry when your lies are exposed. As he reached the threshold, he threw one last look at me, sharp and hateful. You'll regret this, he said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. No, I told him. You will. Victor left, and the cold he brought with him seemed to leave too, like the house could finally breathe. Elise stayed on the floor, shaking, and for the first time I didn't rush to fix her feelings. I looked up the stairs and imagined Leo's birthday again. Candles, cake, the simple joy we were supposed to have. It had been stolen, yes, but it wasn't destroyed. Mara stood beside me, still holding the folder like a shield. She exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding her breath for days. Claire touched my shoulder once, quiet support, and then stepped back, giving me space to stand in my own life again. Victor had returned, expecting silence and obedience. Instead, he returned to witnesses, to proof, and to a house that no longer feared him. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. Revenge wasn't just about hurting him back. It was about taking my home, my real home, out of his shadow and putting it into the light.